When an avoidant ends a relationship, it's not always an abrupt, blindsiding discard. Sometimes there's a slow fade out where they just slowly and steadily pull back all the way into oblivion. You can feel them slipping away from you. They're getting progressively more cold, more distant, less affectionate. The kissy face emojis stop. The communication is less frequent and they're taking longer to reply to your texts. They're canceling plans more often, and when they are there present with you, it feels like they're not emotionally present. It feels like they are checked out. But you ask this person, is everything okay? And they tell you everything is just fine. Work is just busy right now, or things like you're just imagining stuff. But you can feel them pulling away, and it creates so much anxiety because you want to save this relationship and you are becoming increasingly more anxious trying to wrangle them back in because you don't want to lose the person that you felt was your person, the person that you felt that you had this connection and chemistry with that was out of this world. It felt like your twin flame, but now they're slipping through your fingers. There's a couple different reasons why this can happen. And this is most likely to happen with a fearful avoidant, although it can happen with the dismissive avoidant as well. Their fears have been triggered. That is the number one reason. Something has triggered their fears and triggered their avoidant side if they're a fearful avoidant, or just triggered them in general if they're a dismissive avoidant. Could be the fear of losing themselves in a relationship. Maybe you said or did something that seemed controlling or too needy to them, which could just be a normal, healthy relationship behavior or need, but something that still triggered them. Maybe there was a disagreement, a conflict. Conflict and disagreements are absolutely triggering to an avoidant. They grew up in households where their feelings were rejected. If they expressed their emotions, it was shot down. So they associate any kind of disagreements, even small stuff, with rejection and actually abandonment too. So that could have triggered them. Or maybe the growing emotional intimacy overwhelmed them and gave them a ton of anxiety, and they're seeking to create emotional distance. The other possibility is that they are resenting you. Avoidants generally do not communicate their wants, needs, and feelings. Again, it comes from consistent childhood emotional neglect where they were not able to express their feelings either. So they learned from childhood to bottle up their emotions, to suppress it, to not express it. If something's wrong, if you're doing something that they don't like, or if they have a need that's not being met, they just zip it. At best, indirectly hint about what it is that they're feeling. But since their needs and feelings have not been addressed, it's turned into resentment over time, and now they are at the point of resenting you. But rather than directly facing it and communicating it, they just pull back, pull back, pull back. Often they're not even aware of why they feel compelled to do this due to a lack of introspection. But their subconscious mind is triggered and they are just instinctively pulling away from you. And then also sometimes they want you to be the bad guy. They don't want to be the bad guy. They don't want to take accountability. They want to be able to walk from the relationship and say, it wasn't me that ended it. So they pull back so much that it puts you in a position where you're essentially forced to end the relationship. Well, now they get to escape accountability for what they did because you're the one that ended the relationship. And accountability really is something that is very difficult for an avoidant because it pokes at a core wound of shame that they have. They often grew up in households where they had to be perfect. So being anything less than perfect confirms their own perceived inner defectiveness. And they do perceive themselves to be defective inside, and it's because of that consistent childhood emotional neglect. They personalized it, growing up to feel unlovable and defective. So taking accountability in their mind confirms the fact that they are defective. Even though they're not defective, they believe they are. So by getting you to pull the trigger and end the relationship, they get to escape that kind of accountability and get to point the finger at you and say, you're the one that ended it. They didn't break your heart. They can even go so far as to claim that you broke theirs. If they're slow fading out on you, not communicating with you, and you are trying your best to be a consistent, loving partner, it's not your fault. Don't beat yourself up. You didn't cause their attachment wounds. They are adults that are fully responsible for their own behavior and how they show up in a relationship. The lack of communication, the insecurities, the triggers, the attachment wounds, that is not on you. You didn't make them do this. And having needs and feelings in a relationship does not make you needy. So be kind to yourself. Don't blame yourself, because you can't make anybody do anything like that. And blaming yourself just makes it harder to heal, harder to move on. But in many cases, that slow fade out is actually more painful and more anxiety producing than the abrupt discard. It's a horrible thing to go through, and be kind to yourself if you've had to go through.